I think what's really changed was the German announcement in early March, a few weeks ago now, where Germany announced that they wanted to become energy independent by 2035 instead of 2050. So an enormous acceleration in the process of developing a different strategy for energy. And that was quickly followed the next day by the European Union that encouraged everybody to become energy independent. And what was different about the European Union announcement was that, yes, of course, renewable energy is an important part of that energy independence, but the other part is that we reduce our own consumption pro capita of fossil fuels. And that's what really changed, is the energy independence on the one side, but two, acknowledging that we need technologies to reduce our dependence on energy.
And with that said, which are the key climate solutions, and are there companies who can, help us in this process?
There are certainly on the electrification. We often say that we're in the age of electrification. But what does that actually mean? I think it has two aspects. One is on the supply. The supply of electricity is changing. We're now using much more renewable energy, and renewable energy is quite volatile because if it is more windy or less windy or more sun, less sun, it becomes volatile, and that makes it much more difficult to manage that volatility of supply. On the other hand, we now have a lot more electric vehicles on the road, and of course these electric vehicles use fast chargers, so they absorb electricity very, very quickly from the grid. So demand for electricity has become much more volatile, and so we really need companies that can manage that grid. And certainly I think one of the best companies in the world for that would be a company like Schneider. Schneider is a French company that really works on the optimization of energy, and that optimization could be the grid, it could be the supply of energy, it could also be the demand side. So companies like that. At the same time, we need other solutions. For example, ABB, a well-known Swedish company, they announced just before Christmas that they had developed a new fast charger for cars that enables you to have 100 kilometers in 3 minutes. So living in the center of cities like many of us do in apartments, the main reason for not buying an electric vehicle, because we cannot charge it, suddenly disappears, because we can go to our petrol station and suddenly fill the car with electricity instead of oil in 3 minutes.
And Schneider Electronics and the Swedish then ABB, what makes them the leaders in their fields? Why them and not other companies?
I think the field of climate change solutions, finding solutions to the problem of climate change, is all about innovation, is all about finding new ways of doing things using less energy or optimizing that energy. And I think it's the innovation that these companies show. For example, again going back to ABB, they are one of the leaders in electric motors. Now electric motors go into everything that we use, and if we used the latest most efficient motors that ABB produces, we would reduce substantially the amount of energy that we use. So innovation is key.
And how do you see for the past 2 years now, we've talked about problems with components being shipped, and are there any hinders along the way for them in the near future?
Semiconductor availability has been a big challenge for all the companies. But what we're seeing is companies are able to manage these things. It's not only semiconductors, but for example solar panels. If we look at companies that renewable energy companies, for example, we own an American company called Nextera, which is the largest renewable energy company in the world. These kind of companies have seen a rise in the price of, for example, their solar panels, rise in the price of the wind turbines, because raw material prices have increased. But of course, on the other side, energy prices have increased, and of course that has offset the raw material price increases that they have seen.
And just for transparency, these two companies are among your 10 largest holdings in the fund, but I also know that you like Train.
Yes, Train plays to the other theme, the one in the energy efficiency in buildings in this case. They are one of the leaders in terms of technology in heating and ventilation of buildings. And we can do so much more to improve the efficiency of our buildings in terms of updating the heating and ventilation systems that we use. We can replace traditional boilers with heat pumps, for example, which would greatly reduce the need for energy. And so Train, probably from a technology point of view, is world leader. And a company like Train last year reduced the carbon footprint of their customers by about 8 million tons. So an enormous impact on the environment, beneficial impact on the environment that you can do through finding these new technologies.
And there are other challenges as well. You know, we've talked about electrification now, but I'm also thinking about greenhouse gas emissions. What can be done there?
Well, for example, farming. It may surprise some people that something like about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions actually come from farming. And so again here we need innovative solutions to make farming more efficient, use less fertilizer, less pesticides, less water. And you know, the large tractor companies, companies such as Deere, the largest tractor company in the world.
Which you also have.
Yes, we also have, are developing technologies called precision farming. And what precision farming effectively does is it gives the farmer much more data about the type of soil that they have, the amount of water it needs, the amount of fertilizer it needs, so that they can optimize efficiency to a much greater extent, which means that, you know, we will be able to feed more people but using less resources.